Today we're making Puerto Rican pork butt. So we're making pernil, or Puerto Rican pork butt. Essentially, it is a pork butt, and we're gonna make a very quick and easy sauce or marinade, seasoning, whatever you wanna call it. We're gonna coat it, we're gonna smoke it, and then we're gonna slice it. This is not pulled pork. So you do eat this in slices, you don't tear it up. So we're not cooking this to 200 degrees. We're cooking this to like 150 internal, 155, something like that, so that we know it's done and it's juicy, but we're not ripping it apart. You eat it with a fork and knife, not as a sandwich. It's very easy. I am not Puerto Rican. You could probably figure that out with my name, but my cousin married a Puerto Rican woman, and they have awesome, authentic foods, and they've shared this with me. I've had it. It's delicious. It's amazing. So I'm sharing it with you. For this entire recipe and more, check out KamadoCook.com. So what we're going to do first is just take a look at this pork butt. I don't necessarily need to do any trimming, but this corner piece is hard. And because we're not making pulled pork, I don't necessarily need this piece of fat here. So I'm going to leave it because I'm cooking with a Kamado grill. And the Kamado, the heat comes from the bottom. So I'll leave this here to protect the meat from the heat source. If you have a pellet grill or a stick burner, anything like that, you can shave off these hard pieces because we're not cooking this to 200 degrees. We're cooking it to 150 or whatever, 155, whatever you're comfortable with, but we're cooking it to sort of the minimum requirement for human consumption. So first, what we're gonna do two things. Let me have a clean hand. We're gonna do two things. One, we're going to stab little holes in here and shove cloves of garlic in the holes that we've stabbed. Make sure they're deep enough to shove it inside. And that's just to add some flavor, and we're gonna get that nice and deep. All right, so I've shoved about 6 or 7 cloves of garlic into this pork butt on both sides. Now what we have to do is make our sauce. We're gonna go through a few paragraphs today. So the sauce, the marinade, the seasoning, whatever you wanna call it, is very straightforward. First thing you're gonna do is, I basically took an entire head of garlic. I took 6 or 7, 8 cloves and shoved them inside of here. The rest I have in this mixing cup. So now we're going to add olive oil, sazon, adobo, and a little bit of lime juice. The sazon you can find in the ethnic food section, the Hispanic foods, and it comes in packets. We're gonna use 2 packets. This adds a really nice color. There's some flavor there, but it's mostly color and a little hint of flavor, but we're gonna use 2 packets of this, and essentially it's 3 parts to 1 part. So 2 packets, but we're gonna do 3 times the amount of those 2 packets of the adobo. And the olive oil, we're gonna do about 1.5 cups, okay? This doesn't need to be precise. This is not exact. This is as close as you can get it, essentially. So we'll get 1.5 cups in here. Okay, we have our garlic, our olive oil. Let's add 2 packets of sazon. I'm saying it like a French guy for some reason. So 1. 2. Now we're gonna do our adobo. Spilled a little, no problem. And again, it's not exact. Looks good enough to me. And we'll throw in some lime. I don't have fresh lime juice, so we're using this. Or fresh limes, so we're using that. Whatever that amount was. Now, this is a boneless pork butt. You should use bone-in. Bone-in is gonna add a little more flavor. The bone, the marrow, there'll be some flavor. Not the marrow, but the bone will add some nice flavor. But I'm slicing this to eat it, and I just didn't feel like dealing with a bone. But you should use bone-in. So now what we're gonna do is, I have a hand blender here. I will link in the description to the hand blender, some sazon, and everything else we've used. This is super easy and super convenient for something like this. It's also great for milkshakes. And I'm literally just gonna blend it and try not to make a giant mess. And this will be like a nice thick sauce that we can rub on the pork butt. And we're done. It's that easy. These things are amazing. Just make sure I got it. Yeah, these things are amazing. That took 3.5 seconds. Bottom comes off and we're clean. So I'll have a link. This was like $45, something like that. And it's great for milkshakes too. So now we have this sauce and you can see it's not super runny. So it's not water, but it's not paste either. It's somewhere in between. And you can mess with the ratios. If it's too thin, then you can thicken it up with a little more seasoning. If it's too thick, add some more olive oil. So it's not an exact science. So I'm gonna put some gloves on and we're just gonna rub this bad boy down. This is going to get messy, so we're moving this party to a foil tray. And as I said, we're just covering this bad boy. So you see how it pours on? It's pretty thick, but it's not paste. And I know this is miserable, like if you're a baker and you want things in precise numbers, because it's not precise. It's really look, feel, smells amazing. But just this color and this consistency is what you're looking for. So hopefully that's precise enough for you. And we're just gonna coat this entire thing. Nice. Try not to make a mess. I always make a freaking mess. All right. And we'll just let it sit for a few minutes so that my grill comes up to temperature. I mean, this honestly smells like I want to drink it. So, and it's the lime. The lime smells amazing. And the olive oil, and I'm Italian, so I love olive oil. Anyway, so we're just gonna let this sit here for a few minutes and make sure our grill is up to temperature. You can marinate this overnight. You can literally just tent this, leave it like this overnight. It can't hurt anything. Traditionally, the way actual Puerto Ricans do this, not Italians from Connecticut living in Texas. The way actual Puerto Ricans do this is they will marinate this meat, or brine the meat for a day in a 50% water, 50% white vinegar solution. I hate the smell of white vinegar, so I'm not doing that. I didn't do it. You don't need to. It does add some flavor. It softens the meat a bit. But that smell is, I just can't stand it. So that's not happening. And you don't need to. So we're doing it just like this. I'm gonna let this sit probably for a half an hour, mostly so that my grill gets up to temperature and that's stable. We are looking for 300 to 350, okay? Because this is gonna take a while. This isn't super thick, so I'm not gonna blast through it at 400 or anything like that because it may burn. So we're gonna go ahead, 300 to 350, anywhere in there. Once it's stable, this is gonna go on the grates. We're plugging in our 2 thermometers because we're also doing a review of that 2-in-1 instant read and, you know, I don't even know what you call a meat probe that stays in. But we're doing that 2-in-1 review. So you're going to get 2 thermometers out of this. And the goal is very juicy pork butt that doesn't pull apart. All right, we are at a stable 350. So let's go ahead and get this pork butt on. So we are doing fat side down because we do have the heat coming from the bottom. So we're going fat side down and make sure all this goodness is on there. And just a nice little trick to keep my grill from being absolutely ridiculously disgusting is I have a foil pan underneath to catch the drippings and things like that. We're keeping some of the sauce. If I see it drying out, I'll pour some on top, but for now we're good. And because we are doing a review of the 2-in-1 thermometer, I am inserting 2 thermometers. This is the Inkbird. So let's get that in there as deep as it'll go. Come on, get in there. And here is the 2-in-1 instant read versus leave-in. And we're gonna push it in same distance. Okay. And now we can do a direct side-by-side comparison of these two. And this is for the Inkbird. This is just tell me the grill temp to make sure I don't get out of whack or out of control. So we're just gonna leave this in here, and I will come back. We'll check on it every now and then. There's no spritzing involved. If I see it's super dry, I will hit it with some of the sauce that we have, but this isn't spritzing. There's nothing like that. We're just gonna leave this and let it cook. So let me close the lid so it doesn't get out of control, and we'll check back in a little bit. All right, so we have both of our thermometers plugged into this pork butt. We're gonna let it run, and like I said, we don't need to spritz. We don't need to do anything other than just let this cook. I am gonna check on it. I wanna make sure it's not burning. I wanna make sure it's not cooking too fast. So we're gonna check on it, take a look. I just like looking. I know when you're looking, you ain't cooking, but I like to look. So we're gonna check on it. If it's drying out, I will add a little more of that sauce that we made. If not, we'll just let it ride. Again, we're gonna let it sit. We'll check on it. We're going for internal of 150. So this may be like a 5-hour deal. So we'll keep an eye on it. That's why I didn't use the basket. I want this to be a nice, long, steady fire. And I find the basket burns things up too fast. So stay tuned. We'll check back in every now and then and see how we're cooking. We've been going for about 2 hours. We're holding strong at around 300. Let's just take a look. This looks absolutely fantastic. So I did take the rest of the sauce and dump it on top. So you'll see it's a little thicker, a little redder there. We've got some nice crust going. And you hear our drip pan sizzling away. And that is why we use a drip pan, to keep this thing clean. Otherwise, all that garbage would be inside of the grill. The beeping is the ink bird because the temperature dropped. So we'll come back when we hit temp. It's about 120 something internal, and we're going for 145, 150. I ended up cooking the meat to a 165 internal temperature. I was going to do it to 150, but I decided to let it go a little bit longer. I called up my cousin. He talked to his wife. She said, nah, let it go 165, even a little higher if you want. I didn't want to go much farther past that because I want to slice this and eat it like a slice of pork. I don't want it to be pulled pork texture. I just took it off with these high heat gloves. The reason I like this is these are rubber. So I can just go into the sink, wash these off, it doesn't absorb anything, and they'll stay nice and clean. People always recommend welding gloves. I find that disgusting. It's great for touching the grates and dealing with the fire, but as far as your food is concerned, I would never touch food with leather gloves. That's gross. So these are great. I'll have a link in the description. They're super cheap. And again, I'm literally just gonna run them under the sink, put some soap on them, and they'll be good to go. As far as the pork, we're gonna let this rest for about 15 minutes. Pork is not as bad as beef, where it really needs a long time to reabsorb the liquid, but it still needs some time to reabsorb those juices. So we're gonna let it sit. I'll tent it in some foil, and we'll come back when it's time to cut. All right, this has been resting for a little while. We've been resting for about 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, something like that. We have some nice crust going on, and that's why I cooked this covered, or uncovered, because I did want some crust. So let's go ahead, just cut it open. Oh yeah. Yeah, that looks great. And here's the garlic that we shoved inside. Yeah, that looks great. Let's do a nice little slice. This is every time I burn my mouth. Let's just cut this. Put it right here and take a bite. Definitely not the most efficient way to try this. Oh man. Oh yeah. Oh my God. That seasoning, the sauce we made, the marinade we made is unbelievable. That was fantastic. I'm actually gonna take the juices from the drip pan, whip that up and use some of that to dip, sort of like an au jus sauce. So all in all, this is a really good cook. It was super easy. I think it's been on, my hands are gross because of the way I decided to eat that. It has been on for 4 hours. So it didn't take quite the 6 or 7 that I thought it would. So it only took 4 hours. It got us to 165. It is unbelievable. It's ridiculously, here. You can see how juicy it is. It's full of juice. It's fantastic. So I would definitely recommend this cook, even if you're not a fan of This isn't really Hispanic flavor. It's just full of flavor. So like, subscribe, check out KamadoCook.com for more recipes, and let me know if you have any questions. Traditional pernil is wrapped. I went unwrapped on the Kamado, fat side down, and it stayed juicy. I never needed to mess with any tin foil. Let me know in the comments what you think, and thanks for the watch.